Hello, Seton Catholic. My name is Sister Mary Teresa, and I am Cecilia Bettag's older sister. So I think she's a 7th grader this year, which is craziness. And I am here to talk to you about vocations. So let's begin that conversation. What is a vocation? So we'll get started with that question right now in terms of just what exactly a vocation is. I'm getting a phone call. Oh. Hey, take a look who's calling. Check it out. Let me share my phone screen with you so you can check. Oh, check this out. What is a vocation? Oh, look, it was God calling. And that's what a vocation is. A vocation is a call from God. And so it's not as though God literally calls us on our phones, but think of people who call you. Maybe your parents call you, right? And so why do your parents call? Well, maybe they call because they're calling you in for dinner. Or maybe they call because they want you to be there with them, right, at the dinner table. Or they're calling you in because you need to finish your homework. You need to do something, right? And God calls us too. And a lot of times when we think of a vocation, we think of priests or we think of sisters. But did you know that there are actually 4 types of vocations? But we're all called to one vocation. The vocation we're all called to is to be holy. You're called to be a saint. So just earlier this week, we celebrated All Saints' Day, and All Saints' Day is celebrated on the 1st day of November. And we celebrate all of the saints. And what is a saint? Do you remember? I bet you learned this. A saint is somebody who's with God in heaven. And guess what? That's what you're called to be too. And so we celebrate saints like Saint Francis of Assisi, Saint Clare, Saint Teresa, Mother Teresa, Saint John Paul II. So hopefully you know Saint Peter, Saint Paul, right? You know a lot of saints, I bet. But you're called to be one of those too. So imagine that. Put the name Saint in front of your name. So Saint Cecilia, Saint Joseph, Saint John, right? Like put Saint in front of your name and that's you. You're supposed to be a saint. And so that's what God calls all of us to. But if you think about it, we're all pretty different, right? Even in your classes, you're all mostly the same age in your class, but you're all different. Some of you love sports and love recess. Some of you really love school. Some of you love English class. Some of you love science class, right? We're all different, and God knows that. And so God doesn't just call us all generically. He calls you personally. And so God calls us to 4 different types of vocations. So those vocations are to be married, like over here, to be a single person, to not get married, to be a priest for gentlemen, or to be a sister for ladies, right? And God calls us to one of those 4 things. But God also calls us to the specific maybe job that we have. So he could call you to be a mom or to be a dad. He could call you to be a teacher, to be a doctor or a nurse, right? God knows what you most desire. And here's the cool thing. I want you to think about what you love the most. What do you love to do? Because God calls us by what we love to do. So I'm going to tell you the story of my vocation. So I'm going to skip this one. That's for the older kids. So my vocation story. So this is my family. There's little Cecilia up at the top. And this is my family when they came to visit me just after I began in the convent. So you can tell right now I'm wearing a veil and I wasn't at that point. That was a different stage in my vocation. So that was about 4 years ago that we took this picture. So this is my family, and I was born into a great family. We have a lot of fun together. As you can tell, you can count, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 kids in my family, and then my parents down there on the bottom too. So we had a lot of fun growing up, and my parents sent us to Catholic schools. And here's the craziest part. The story of my vocation begins in the school that you are sitting in right now. So I want you to imagine this. Imagine you're in the 3rd grade classroom. You know where that is? And imagine that guess who is your teacher? You know this person. Mrs. O'Connor. Mrs. O'Connor used to teach 3rd grade. Isn't that crazy? She was my 3rd grade teacher. And we were sitting in her classroom and we were just going around the room saying what we wanted to be when we grew up. So I want you to think about that question. Think back to our slide a couple slides ago. What do you feel called to do? Do you maybe feel called to be married? And then what do you feel called to do? Do you maybe want to be married and be a mom? Or do you maybe want to be married and be a doctor? Or do you feel called, like maybe you feel called to be a priest or to be a sister, or maybe you feel called to be a single person and to be a teacher, right? Like there's all kinds of options. So what do you feel called to do? And we were talking about that question, and we were thinking about what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I was born in Colorado, and I love the mountains. And so Colorado has tall, tall mountains, not like Wisconsin. Wisconsin doesn't really have any mountains. But we had moved to Wisconsin by the time I was in 3rd grade. And so most of my friends in my 3rd grade class, there were about 17 of us, most of them had never seen the mountains, that they'd not left Wisconsin. And I thought, yes, this is gonna be so cool. I'm gonna tell them something brand new that they've never heard of. Because do you know what my dream job was? It was to be a climbing ranger. So do you know parks like Kohler-Andrew State Park or national parks like the Grand Canyon? They have people called rangers, and their job is to be outside and kind of like patrol that park. But this job is the job of a climbing ranger. So climbing rangers are at national parks with tall mountains like this one here in Colorado. And climbing rangers' job is to go rock climbing every day. That would be my dream. So I was very excited to tell my 3rd grade class that my dream job was to be a climbing ranger, because I knew nobody else would say that, right? We had several people who said teacher, several people who said a doctor or a nurse or a lawyer or a construction worker or a football player or things like that. I knew I was going to be the only one to say this. And so it was my turn. And I was sitting way up against those like greenish bookshelf things. And I said, I want to be a sister. And I went like this, because I had never seen a sister before. Did you know that I didn't meet a sister until I was in high school? I didn't meet my first sister until I was 14 years old. And so I thought, what did I say? What is a sister? I already am a sister. I have a lot of brothers and sisters. What did I just say? And so my first thought was, that idea did not come from me. I was planning to say a climbing ranger. But then my second thought was, oh my gosh, that's all I ever want to do. And here's the confusing part. I didn't know what a sister was, what a sister did. But by the time I was in high school, I met my first sister, a woman named Sister Jane, who's in my religious community now. And I ended up considering that call that I had in 3rd grade. And so then by the time I graduated college in 2015, when many of you were very little, when I graduated college in 2015, I entered the convent. And so these are the sisters. So I'm hanging out over here on the right side, but we got to hang out with this hot rod car in Door County one time. And so I entered the convent, and so I joined the sisters. And so what we do is my religious community, we teach in schools, and we nurse in hospitals, and we work in parishes. Those are the main things. And so what do I do as a sister? Well, a sister doesn't get married, because a sister is considered a bride of Christ. So think about a bride. Right? What do brides wear? Well, usually they wear a veil, right? And so we're considered like we dedicated our whole life to Jesus, just like a bride dedicates her life to her husband and her family. And so every day it's my main job, and it's my great privilege to have my life centered here in this chapel. And this chapel is where we gather at least 3 times a day. So we gather for morning prayer, for evening prayer, and we have mass every single day. And so our main job is to pray, but I also get to teach. And so they sent me, so my community, Cecilia lives in Sheboygan, just like all of you, but my community sends us to different places around the country that need sisters there to teach or to work in their hospital or things like that. So I got sent to Yuma, Arizona. So we're in the middle of the desert. So this is a picture from not too far away from our house, and we're in the Sonoran Desert, which is one of the only places in the world that you'll see saguaro cacti. Now look at this. This is craziness. My mom and dad came to visit me, and we took this picture because now look. Look at how tall that is. That's my mom and I next to it. These cacti get so huge. So it's fun because I'm in a whole different part of the country that I'd never seen before. So it's cool because as a sister, we get sent around the country. So we have sisters in Ohio, in Michigan, in Nebraska, in Missouri, in Arizona, in Wisconsin, right? All different places that our sisters are at. And so we sometimes get sent from one place to another. So for the last 3 years, I've been here in Yuma, Arizona. And Yuma is way, way on the southwest corner of Arizona. We're on the border of California and Mexico. So some of our students at our school even come from Mexico every single day to go to school. And so now I teach at Yuma Catholic High School. And my favorite part, that picture was taken just a couple of weeks ago, is I coach the cross-country team. So I get to run with a bunch of the students. We've got about 15 kids out for the team, and I'm filming this today because tomorrow I was going to film it, but then I remembered we have a cross-country meet tomorrow, so wish us luck. So we're in the middle of our cross-country season, and then later on in the year, I get to coach the track team. So if you've ever heard of like hurdles or high jump, long jump, we do a lot of that. So it's a lot of fun because I think I was nervous when I first felt called to be a sister because I thought I'd never get to do things that were fun anymore, that I just like stay in a chapel on my knees all day. But that's not true, right? Like that God calls us by what we love. And I love being outdoors and I love being with young people. And right, like God knew that my desire to be a climbing ranger, like to be outdoors all the time. He's like, great, I'm going to put you in Arizona where it's beautiful all year long. And you're going to be a coach. And I get to coach in 2 different seasons. And it's just really like, it's such a rewarding thing because I love my students here. In fact, in just a few minutes, I'm going to be leaving to go to their volleyball game. So that'll be fun. I'm their #1 fan. So I just want you all to consider, like, I just think it's very good for every single girl to think for at least one moment in your entire life, is it possible that God might be calling me to be a sister? And I think it's good for every single man at some point in your life to think, is it possible that God could be calling me to be a priest? Right? Because we never know what like God's dreams are. And the good news is, think of your biggest, most wild and crazy dream. And God's dreams for you are bigger than your dreams for yourself. And so I'm just going to skip to this last one, which is Pope Francis. You all recognize him? He says this, and I'm just going to end with this little line. He says, ask Jesus what he wants from you and be brave. So have you thought about that? Like when you think about what you want to be when you grow up, have you thought about what Jesus wants you to be? Have you asked him? Because all prayer is talking to Jesus, right? He's right here. And we just talk to him and we say, Jesus, I pray right now for all of the students here at Seton Catholic School. And I pray, Jesus, that every single one of them would have the courage to ask you what you want, what your dream is for their life. And give them, Jesus, the ability to hear you and the courage to do it. So it was a great joy to be with you today. Thank you for being such good listeners. You tell Cecilia hi for me, and Mrs. O'Connor too, and any of the other teachers that I remember from Seton. So it's great to see all of you. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful vocation week. I pray for you all every single day. Be good.